Hello and welcome to Unwind Sessions, where right after my shift I give the highlights of my workday and answer any questions that might have been asked at a previous session. My name is Juan. I am an English, Spanish, medical video remote consecutive interpreter with over 4 years of experience, and today is Monday, July 19, 2021. Today I took a total of 28 sessions. Like always, a mix between audio sessions and video sessions. I took a couple of video sessions that were a little long. One was a little bit over an hour, maybe an hour 10 minutes, and another one was short of an hour, probably 45 minutes. The rest of the sessions were just a mix of phone calls and video sessions, like always. And there were not any highlights today. There are a couple of things worth mentioning, but they are more related to like my day and not really related to interpreting at all, I would say. So yeah, let's get started with my two highlights. So today I had a couple of Rona calls. It was 2 to be exact, which that's what a couple means, right? So there were a couple of them, and I'm talking about the bad intubated with a ventilator sessions. Of course, didn't speak to the patient because the patient couldn't speak, but I was speaking to the family of the patient. So I mean, it's been a while since I had some calls like that, or people that had been ill with this. So I mean, it just makes me think that whatever they're saying in the news is real, and this could potentially become worse. I really don't know, but just stay safe, guys. I've already had my grandpa passed away from this in Christmas last year, so just stay safe. I'm pretty sure we've all had people that have passed away from Rona, and we wish we could have been more careful with them, or I don't know, but just be careful, guys. This is not over yet. I got vaccinated on Friday, the first vaccination, and well, I don't even know what to think of this. I just hope this is over soon, and just take all your precautions and be safe, because this is starting to be real again, and it sucks. And now on a lighter note, the second highlight of today is that it was a kid. Well, he was like a teenager, right? And then he went into the doctor for testicular pain. And then the doctor asked him, all right, so which side hurts? Is it one side or both? And then the mother asked his child, because the child was not even, well, I shouldn't say child, a teenager, was not even answering the doctor's questions. So the mother asked him, and then he said, well, I don't even remember. And then the mother turns to the doctor, and she says, well, he says he doesn't even remember. Oh God. And then of course we all had a laugh because of that. And then the doctor turns to the patient and asks him, well, does it hurt now? And then the patient says, yes. And then the doctor, well, which side does it hurt? And then the guys are like, well, the left side. So I just had a huge laugh about that. Like, he forgot, but he was feeling the pain right at that moment, right? So I mean, that was just so funny. I just had to share that with you guys. So let's get on to what you came here to see. And on the last video, I believe that I did for online sessions, we had the 10 must-know vocabulary words for OBGYN sessions part 1. So this is going to be part 2. Now, I would like to remind you before I get into that we have vocabulary lists in Patreon for medical interpreters. They each have 50 terms each, and they are very, very, very good vocabulary lists for beginner medical interpreters, and maybe some interpreters with moderate experience. And they are there. They're available just for $1 of your support, and you not only get access to that, but you get access to everything that's on the Patreon page. So go ahead and make sure that you take advantage of that, because it's not going to stay that cheap forever, right? So and one more thing before I get into the list. If you actually go ahead and into our Patreon page, which is, there's a link in the description, you are going to see what the lists are about. Of course, you're not going to be able to see the lists unless you pay, but you can see all of the material that we have there. I'm gonna go ahead and repeat it in much more detail at the end of the video, just so that I can get to the vocabulary list right now. So let's get started. 10 must know OBGYN session vocabulary words, part 2. Now, some of these definitions are from rosemark.net, mayoclinic.org, and just good old Google. So vocabulary list number 1, and that is fibroid. So a fibroid is a benign, non-cancerous growth that form on the inside of the uterus, on its outer surface, or within the uterine wall itself. Now, since this is benign and it's non-cancerous, a lot of women have fibroids, and they probably don't know that they have them until they have a coincidental finding. A coincidental finding is something that they find, but that's not what they're actually looking at. So it's just something that they found on coincidence, and they always let the patient know that they have this. But for the most part, there's nothing wrong with them, and a person can just get on with their life without a problem. Sometimes this does get really, really bad, and they need to get a hysterectomy, which I will explain later in this video. So yeah, vocabulary word number 1, fibroid. All right, vocabulary word number 2, endometrium. Now, the definition for endometrium is the mucous membrane that lines the uterus. Now, honestly, I did not, well, probably most of the vocabulary words in this list I didn't learn until I was actually a medical interpreter. But endometrium was one of the ones that really surprised me, because the endometrium is, like it says on the definition, the mucous membranes that lines the uterus. And this is the reason why women get periods, because that endometrium, it like thickens, and then like at the end of the month it falls out, so that a new endometrium can come out, and it's always ready to receive the egg and the sperm, right, for ovulation. So it's always a fresh new lining, so that the pregnancy, so that it could be an effective pregnancy. So that is endometrium. And I don't know, the reason that it surprised me that I didn't know this vocabulary term before becoming a medical interpreter is because I don't know, I'm very curious, but I never wondered why women got periods. I don't know, I just never wondered. It's something natural that women get. But anyways, moving on to number 3, and yeah, you can see it here, and that's intrauterine device, or the abbreviation which most of the time you're going to hear, IUD. I don't think I've ever heard a doctor say intrauterine device. The medical providers always say IUD, and this is a small device that is inserted in the and left inside the uterus to prevent pregnancy, and this works for 5 years. And we're probably familiar with this. This is a term that Well, I didn't know the term, but I knew what it was before becoming a medical interpreter. So this is like a little T that they put inside of the uterus, and then it blocks the fallopian tubes, so that way sperm can go in and ovulation or eggs can't come out of the fallopian tubes into the uterus and cause a pregnancy. So that is one of the terms that you are going to hear in most OBGYN sessions. So be sure to remember that, IUD, and of course the interpretation in your target language. And number 4, mirena. And mirena is a hormonal intrauterine device, IUD, that can provide long-term birth control, also known as contraception. Now, the mirena is a type of IUD like I mentioned, but there are different types of IUDs. For example, there's a copper IUD which has no hormones at all, and it works the same way. But mirena, well, it doesn't work the same way. They all potentially work the same way, but there are a few differences. Because the copper one just works as I said, but the mirena, since it has hormones, it thickens the mucus in the cervix to stop sperm from reaching or fertilizing an egg, and it thins the lining of the uterus and partially suppresses ovulation. So the regular one just makes it difficult for the eggs or the ovulation to get out of the fallopian tubes, and for sperm to actually get well, reach an egg, right? But now mirena, with the hormones, it takes us a step further. So you have that protection from a non-hormonal IUD, but it also thickens the mucus inside of the cervix, which I explained the cervix in last week's session, and it prevents the sperm from getting in there. So that's one more step in pregnancy prevention, and it also thins the lining of the uterus. So the endometrium, it makes it thinner, so an egg, if an egg happens to get there, it will not stick. It'll just fall out because it's so thin that it just falls out. And one of the benefits that I've heard that mirena causes is that it makes women not have a period. Why? Because of the very same thing that I just explained. It thins the endometrium, so it's logical that if they don't have a period, or the period is very light, well, they have this IUD. So that is another very important term. And for number 5, that is hysterectomy. And hysterectomy is a surgical removal of the uterus. Now, I told you that I was going to explain this in detail. And why would someone need a surgical removal of the uterus? Well, there's a lot of conditions that can happen to the uterus that it needs to be removed. Like, for example, cancer in the uterus, or fibroids. Like if a woman has like a lot of fibroids, just because there's I forgot the term of it, but there's a term for that condition. Cystic fibrosis. No, that's something different. But anyways, if there's a lot of fibroids inside of the uterus, this could be bad news for women, and that could cause a lot of pain and a lot of problems. So one option is to go ahead and do a hysterectomy, so they remove the uterus. And that is a term that you must know. And so moving on to term number 6, estrogen. And estrogen is a female hormone produced in the ovaries that stimulates the growth of the lining of the uterus. So estrogen is pretty much the hormone that makes you have a period, right? It promotes the growth of the endometrium. That way you can get pregnant and you can have a period, right? It's like refreshing itself, constantly renewing itself to be able to have a good home to make a good home for the baby, right? And one quick addition to the definition of estrogen. Whenever a woman gets oophorectomy, which is the removal of the ovaries, which the ovaries produce estrogen, when that happens, and I didn't add oophorectomy in the list, it'll be on tomorrow on the part 3 list. But anyways, so sometimes they have to remove a woman's ovaries, and I'll get to a potential cause, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And sometimes I'm going to explain it later. So they have to remove the ovaries, right? And then when they remove the ovaries, if the woman is young, below the age of 55, younger than 55, then they will not produce any estrogen. And what is going to happen if a woman does not produce estrogen? If a woman does not produce estrogen, she will go into menopause. And this causes a lot of hormonal changes in a woman's body. And the way to prevent this is that they actually give the women birth control that contains estrogen to prevent that from happening at such a young age. And whenever a woman goes into menopause, it's because her ovaries are stopping the production, or perimenopause is because the woman's ovaries are beginning to halt the production of estrogen. And when there is no estrogen production, then that is when women get menopause. So estrogen, very, very, very important. And number 7, epidural. What is an epidural? An epidural is an anesthetic used especially in childbirth to produce loss of sensation below the waist. Now it says especially, but there are many uses for that anesthetic, and that usually goes into the spine. And as medical interpreters, I have had to interpret while they're giving an epidural, because they have some instructions and the person can't move and they're going into the spine. So just any little move of the needle could create like problems for the person, or they could inject the medicine into a different place that it's not supposed to go. So you are going to be asked to interpret sessions where they are giving the epidural. Now there's not a lot of interpretation, but there are some tricky words, for example, curl your body and things like that. So be ready for that, and I would suggest go ahead and look at the procedure of the epidural and learn how it is, so that way you can be able to interpret it when the time comes, because believe me, it will come. All right, and number 8, bacterial vaginosis. And bacterial vaginosis is a type of vaginal infection caused by the overgrowth of number of organisms that are normally found in the vagina. Now, the vagina, and not just the vagina, but our body in general, we have bacteria. We have bacteria that is just there, not causing a problem or anything. Now, I'm gonna mention something that this is like 15 years ago. There's a movie called Osmosis Jones, and then there is even a spin-off show for little kids. It's called Ozzy and Drix. It's about a pill and a white blood cell that actually it shows you like a cartoon version of like the inside of the body and everything, and then you could see how like there's bacteria, like the bad guys are just chilling there, like they're not really causing trouble, but they're living there in peace. And then it's only when one of them gets like the right conditions, or something happens, or a new bacteria or a new virus gets into the body, then that's when it starts wreaking havoc in the whole body. Go ahead and watch Osmosis Jones and Ozzy and Drix. It'll give you like a good idea of just like like the how the body fights infections and all of that. Of course, it's very cartoony, and take that information with a grain of salt, but it's also very, very informational and fun. So going back into bacterial vaginosis, so the vagina has bacteria that is normal there, and it just lives there. But for some reason, the chemistry inside of the vagina goes off, and then it promotes the growth of bad bacteria, I should say, and not the good bacteria. So then the bad bacteria starts to grow, and then you get bacterial vaginosis. So very, very, very common in women and in OBGYN sessions. So go ahead and make sure you learn that in your target language. And number 9, vaginitis. Now, vaginitis is just inflammation of the vagina. Vaginitis can be caused by bacterial vaginosis, but there are a ton of other things that can cause vaginosis, which I'm not going to get into it, but vaginitis, I'm sorry, that can cause vaginitis. So go ahead and look that up and look at all the causes, and it might be a good idea to learn some of those terms. And we are getting close to the end. Number 10, polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS. Now, I've heard it both ways. The professionals, the medical providers really don't have a preference. They will say polycystic ovarian syndrome or PCOS interchangeably. Sometimes they will just say PCOS. Sometimes they will just say polycystic ovarian syndrome, and then every time after that they will say PCOS. And this is very common, and the definition of PCOS is a hormonal disorder common among women of reproductive age. Women with PCOS may have infrequent or prolonged menstrual period or excess male hormone androgen levels. The ovaries may develop numerous small connections of fluid follicles and fail to regularly release eggs. So PCOS is a condition that can keep women from getting pregnant. I've had some sessions where ladies with PCOS are not able to get pregnant, and that is like the whole reason, and there's no cure for PCOS. There's other women that have PCOS and they are getting pregnant, so it just really varies, and the PCOS could get so severe that it causes you need to get a oophorectomy, which is removal of the ovaries because of it, because it gets so bad. But the oophorectomy, I'm gonna get into it on the next video, and I will probably be doing that video this week, so expect that. And I haven't had time to look at the comments, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of good ideas there. I know there's some good ideas. There's a couple of videos that I'm pending on, so yeah, we have some I have some really good videos lined up this week for you guys, and we hopefully have a lot of new material as well. So that is going to be pretty much it for me today. Please leave your questions on the comments, and I will answer some of them on the next session. Remember that I'll be here every Monday through Friday after work, and also that we have a Patreon page where with as little as just $1 of your support, you help motivate us to create much more content, and you have access to everything on that page. That means medical practice videos free of those annoying ads, you know, scripts for those medical practice videos, answer sheets to those medical practice videos, vocabulary lists like I've already mentioned, and much more content. And the best of all is that you will actually win a peace inside of our heart. And right now we were able to buy a brand new computer for Illustrator, Caro, who happens to be my little sister, and she's getting very good. She is the one that does those illustrations that you see on our videos, and she's about to get really good. And of course, there's no limiting factor with that new computer that she has. So she is very thankful. We are very thankful to all of our patrons and to all of our viewers, and we really feel the love, and we love you. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you liked the video and have not done so for more content. And don't forget to share. Happy interpreting. Goodbye.